Hey, winner. Welcome to Red Hot Mindset. I am so glad you're here today, and I'm really excited to start a new series that's going to be happening every month for a little bit here. And I'm going to be bringing on moms who qualified for the 2020 Boston Marathon. And my goal with it is to share their struggle victory story, to have the dream of qualifying for Boston to actually qualifying. And 2020 is a little special this year because it got postponed with COVID-19 and then obviously got canceled. And some are going to get to run in 2021, but not all may make the cutoff because we have to re-register to try to get back in. So I'm bringing moms on here to share their story about struggle victory, and I'm really thinking that you're going to get a lot out of these interviews because they're just ordinary moms just like you and me, going after extraordinary goals, overcoming mental barriers, getting past their walls to mentally get stronger and tougher to really succeed and hit that goal that they have. Today's guest I'm really excited about. Her name is Anat Gotfried, and she's a first-time Boston Marathon qualifier, and she's from Chicago, actually originally from Israel, but she lives in Chicago now. She's a mama of three, and she started her running journey in 2006. The 2020 Boston Marathon would have been her victory run because she thrives off of a challenge and wanted a goal to separate her from ordinary runners. Today, we dive into her runner journey and talk about the struggles of trying to get the necessary training in while performing all the roles that motherhood brings. I think you're really going to enjoy her story, and one of the fun things about her story is how and where she met her husband. So tune in and you will find out. Well, welcome, Anat. I'm so excited to have you on the show with me today.
Thanks. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, before we get started and get really deep into your story, I'd love for you just to share a little bit about you and your family, kind of where you're from and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I am originally from Israel. I was born there. Um, and I grew up there. I went to the army there. So I was in the Air Force for 4 years. And then 9 years ago, I moved to the US with my now husband. So we lived in Miami for a couple years, moved to Chicago, downtown for a couple years, and then the northern suburbs. So we've kind of been globetrotting a little bit.
Hmm.
But ever since I think around the time when I was in the army is when I really started, exercising. But then it slowly turned into like really competing and in races and sort of progressively got a little more intense every year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
cool. Yeah. It sounds like you started in spins. Spin. Did you do spin classes? Did you go outside and do spin? Um,
Yeah, I started in spin classes. Basically, in the Air Force, I know it sounds like you're probably super active in the Air Force, but I was a computer programmer, so I was very static,
okay.
and that is what led me to join a gym. And I decided I joined the gym, and I said, okay, I'm going to try every single class and see what I like. And once I did the spin class, I stopped there because in Israel everything is very very thoughtful, and so every playlist is curated like a DJ. It's totally dark. There's a disco ball. It's kind of like a cult following. It's always the same people. They want to sit in their specific spot,
Right. Right.
and I sort of fell into this group. And if I wasn't in a class, people would be like, where's Anat? Like, why is she not here? And so that sort of got me into the fitness as far as a routine.
Hmm.
I used to swim with my mom. My mom was a swimmer, so I used to go swimming with her. But I only went swimming with her because she'd buy me coffee afterwards, like a cappuccino. So I sort of always did that, but I never really got into it in like a regular basis until spin class. Then I was an exchange student at University of Pennsylvania for a semester in computer science. And there was a girl there who was the Israeli squash champion.
Oh, wow.
And I went to spin classes at UPenn, and they were horrible. I mean, it was literally a teenager putting on her iPod playlist and
Okay.
running it, and I said, "Okay, this is not the experience I'm used to." And then my friend, she said, "Why don't you come running with me?" And at first, I really just sort of wanted to exercise and the company. And so at first, I started by just joining her on her runs. I literally could not breathe. Um, like midway through the run, it was really, really hard. I remember it. But then eventually, it used to be that she'd call me and ask me if I wanted to go for a run. And then after a while, like she'd get busy. And so I started calling her and asking her if she could go for a run. And then eventually there were days where she couldn't go for a run. And then I started running by myself too. Um, and she told me I'd run a marathon, which I did not believe her at all. And then she told me when I get back to Israel to just sign up for every 10K race that there is. And
Okay.
so I said, okay, sure, I can do that. So I came back to Israel. I signed up for all the races.
Hmm.
Um, and I just did them I had a race every weekend. And I raced, did 10Ks. Eventually from there, one of my running coaches got me into triathlons. And so I did a women's triathlon in Israel, in Herzliya, which is a really lovely race. And you get, instead of a you get a medal, but you also get a rose at the end. Like
Oh,
it's
cool.
very it's great for beginners. And then I was hooked. And then I said, okay, now I'm going to do every triathlon. And so started doing those. Sorry, this is a really long story, but it just sort of
Fun.
builds on. It didn't happen like overnight at all.
Mhm.
Moved back to the United States, to Chicago. Met a coach in Chicago that said he would train me for a half Ironman. Uh, so I did that, and I also signed up for the New York City Marathon. So I was signed up, but then I was not really prepared for it. I didn't know if I was going to get in because of the lottery, so I deferred it by a year.
Okay.
Um, I did the half Ironman, and then I went back to Israel. And I knew I was going to do the race, and I had a coach who was helping me. And then I get a Facebook message from some guy, and it said, "I see you're running the New York City Marathon too." And I was looking for other Israelis who were going to run there. What I didn't know is that what he did was basically, at the time, I don't know if you can still do this, but you can search the participant list.
Okay.
So you can search by country, by gender, by age, and by location.
Okay.
Um, and so him and the secretary who was at his company at the time, this was like their idea of like, oh, I'm gonna find you, I'm gonna find you a wife, kind of thing. Uh, and they figured, okay, if she signed up for the marathon, clearly like she, cares about her fitness, so at least she'll be in good shape. And so they filtered by, Israel. It was, I think he searched like 25 to 29 or something,
Okay.
female, and then he crossed reference with Facebook to see what everybody looked like. Uh,
Nice that we had Facebook to do that.
yeah, I know. He like created his own dating like app basically, and then me and the girl I was training with both got messages from him.
Oh, too funny.
Yes. And so I asked him, like, do you know who this guy is? And she's like, I don't know. I just accepted his friend request. Like he said he's running the race too. So, why not? Um, and then I started chatting with him. At the time I was in like Barcelona for vacation for like a month, and he was in Miami. And so we just started chatting back and forth. And then when we were both back in Israel, that's when we met.
Okay.
He wanted to go for a run for our first date, and I said no.
Not public enough,
We have to have
right?
like let's have a real date, and now we're married with 3 kids, so that worked out.
That is too funny. I love that story and just how
Yeah,
persistent he was too. And
yeah,
how he just kind of went for it, you know?
yeah. When
So
stalking goes right.
Yeah, totally. And that, because online dating is pretty popular, but that was, before it became very popular. So
Hmm.
I think that just is a neat story. And so what was your initial take to that? Like when he messaged you, were you kind of like, okay, whatever? Or what was your initial reaction?
I didn't think about it that much. I was on vacation, so I was only checking my like the internet once a day when we came back, and it was sort of like fun to chat with him. I didn't like read into it too much.
Hmm.
And then when I told him like that we were going to be, in Barcelona, and he was like very, very worldly and traveled a lot.
Okay.
So he gave me a list of like 20 different restaurants and food recommendations for each one. And I was just like, wow, this guy's been like, he knows how to travel. And I love that, um,
Yeah.
that aspect. 'Cause then, that's something that we love doing together. We love traveling. We did the Ironman in Brazil together, and obviously the marathons that for us was international travel.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's something we hope our kids will want to do with us too.
Yeah, that's really neat to be able to have it as a family
Hmm.
thing. So tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about your experience. What made you decide to move to the US? Did it, because he wasn't from here either, right? He's from Israel as well.
So he's from Israel. After when he was growing up, his family moved to Colombia,
Okay.
and then when it got dangerous there, they moved to Miami. And ever since then, their whole family's been sort of back and forth, Tel Aviv, Miami. So they're all, also very international. So he has lived in the United States. My parents are both American, so they both moved to Israel before I was born. But
Mhm.
my extended family lives in the United States.
Okay.
So we moved to Miami primarily originally because of his job. And then I started working as a consultant in Miami. So that's how we made the big move.
Okay. Very cool. And did that
Hmm.
happen before you ran the New York Marathon, or were you commuting when you ran the marathon for the first time?
So we came to the US to run the marathon and
Okay.
then came back.
Mhm.
So we met before the marathon, we did the marathon, we came back. Then separately, we weren't even yet engaged, but he told me, he said, I'm thinking of moving to the US. Would you come with me? And I said yes. Um, and a few months later, he proposed. So
Perfect.
perfect.
So tell me a little bit about the New York Marathon. It was your first experience. Did it go the way you
Yeah,
expected? Were there any kinks in there? Tell me all about
yeah. So nothing will ever replace the first marathon feeling that you get.
it. Hmm.
Um, I was really, really well prepared. I had a coach that was, I basically did exactly what he told me to do. But you don't have that confidence of, trusting in yourself.
Hmm.
Um, I did everything like clockwork. And his theory at the time was, he said, let's do this. You'll split the race into three even sections, like distance sections. The first section, you do the slowest, the middle, like faster. So basically, if you say if your average needs to be X, you'll do, I don't know how much faster, but you start off slow as you're probably going to be the whole race. In the middle, you go faster, and in the end, you end up at the average pace you want to be. And his theory on that was that you're not going to have like all of your energy to run your fastest at the end. In the middle is when you're feeling your best. And going from that fast pace to that average pace feels like you're slowing down, but you're actually right where you need to be.
Hmm.
And everything clicked. I mean, you know how it is with marathons, depending on all the conditions, you never know. You could have a day where everything is great and it's perfect, and another day where, it's rainy. And even though you're in the best shape of your life, things just don't work out.
Hmm.
And this one did work out. So it was my first one. I did a 3:47, which I was really happy about for my
It's an awesome.
my first marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just, I was, high the whole time. It's such a great race. There's people everywhere. And for us, it was sort of a bigger trip, and we like those destination races, right? Because the whole reason you do the races is also to get, you get a high feeling from it, like you get a good feeling. And when you combine it with like you're in a, a totally different place, and it's all, exciting and big. I mean, I've never been in such a big venue before. All of the races in Israel are pretty small. So to see all the like thousands of runners is just really overwhelming. So my eyes were like that the whole time, like big eyes the whole time, just soaking it all in. So the first one went really well. So that always helps when you have a good first experience.
Yes.
You want to keep doing more.
Yes. Yep. And I think
Mhm.
even when you have a bad experience, it's almost you still have that taste. You're like, I need to
Yeah.
do this again, or I don't know what it is about that
Hmm.
marathon, but you cross that finish line. You're like running the whole time, like, I'm never gonna do this again. And then you cross the finish
Yeah.
line, you're like, I think I need to do that again. And
Yeah.
so I equate it to having a baby. I mean, it's the same like,
Yeah. I
no,
was gonna
we're
say.
fine, but so after you finished the New York Marathon, what
Mhm.
time when did you decide that qualifying for the Boston Marathon seemed like a great goal for you, or when did you
Yeah.
decide that was a dream of yours?
So that was more recent. So I kept doing marathons for fun, just to keep trying to, beat my previous time.
Mhm.
Um and I didn't really, how sometimes there are things that seem so far away from you that you're not motivated to try to get to them. Like if someone told me you should train for the Olympics, like I would laugh it off. That's how I was with the Boston Marathon. If I looked at the paces that I needed to do, I would just, it's not achievable.
Right.
I'd say, well, I can't even do a 10K at this pace. How am I going to ever do a marathon at this pace? Like it made absolutely no sense. What changed was a couple of things happened. I started running. So I moved to the suburbs, and I found out there's this neighbor that she ran Chicago a couple times, and we started running together. And she was faster than me, so I always tried to, you know, keep up with her. And she talks a lot, and so I wanted to be able to, to talk back to her and not just like breathe loudly right next to her, because nobody wants that. So there was just all this consistency, and her mentality was like we would text each other in the morning, and sometimes like the weather was, in Chicago it gets, pretty bad, and I'm like a desert person, I'm from Israel, and I'll send her a message like, it's, it's 0 degrees, and she'd be like, okay, take your hand warmers. Like she would never say like, oh, the weather's too bad to run. Like you just have to sort of dress right. And I think that to me was good as far as like the training. She had done Boston a few times, and so I started hearing the stories, um, but I still didn't think I could actually do it.
Mhm.
And then there's a coach I started working with, and I think really the turning point for me was the track workouts.
Okay.
He had me doing track, and once a week I would do the speed work. I think that maybe the first few months I failed every single workout. So I literally hit my the maximum that I could possibly do, maximum in speed, maximum in sets. I mean, I just couldn't complete the workout as he had planned it. And he was always very pleased when this happened. Like for him, it was a success of like he was trying to gauge, okay, where is my top point where I can't take it anymore,
Mhm.
and the fact that I got to that point, like that gave him a really good indicator of where I was. And that's when you start improving, is when you push yourself out of where you're comfortable as far as your pace. And he started telling me that, he said, well, he asked me what's my goal for the marathon. And the first initial reaction was like, well, I'll, beat my previous time. But then the more I ran with my neighbor Christy, I felt like, maybe Boston maybe I'll tell him that Boston is my goal, so he feels like I am striving for that. But it's kind of like the, fake it till you make it. You just once you say it a few times to people, you kind of start to believe that maybe it is something that's possible. And then once you believe it's possible and you go for it once, then it boosts your confidence like even more, especially if you get close to it or you get the feeling like you really could. So it was kind of like once when that gap was too far away, I didn't go for it at all, and I didn't have the motivation because I didn't hear the stories and how like I want that experience that I had in the first marathon, and I'm not going to get it again. So how can I get something as close as possible to that? To do a race that's like as epic as the Boston Marathon, I think will give me like that a similar feeling to what I had for that like first marathon. Especially now that I have to wait extra long for it, I'm hoping it'll be that much sweeter.
Yeah, because I think it's pretty similar to me because you qualified in November 2018, is that right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was October 2018, and so, yeah, I
Okay.
totally feel ya going, "Are we ever gonna get there?"
I know. I know.
It'll just make it all that much sweeter, and,
Yes.
we'll see what we do with it, but, so how many times did it take you to qualify? How many marathons had you run? And then how many marathons did you run to qualify to get there? And I know you have a kind of a cool,
Yeah.
story of qualifying, not qualifying,
Yeah.
qualifying, so we'll kinda get there too, but
Yeah. So the Boston Marathon would have been my 10th marathon. So I ran 9 marathons before that. But I also did the 2 Ironmans. So I don't ever count those as marathons because it would be embarrassing. Um,
hey, they're
but
marathons in themselves.
um, so I was always pretty fit once I started doing the Ironmans, and that's sort of like a way of life. As far as qualifying, I think it was really there was one year where I had in the back of my mind that I could qualify, but I didn't actually train at the level I should have. I was just sort of very, very hopeful
Mhm.
that it might happen. And I wasn't with the coach yet. And then the year after that, I did Chicago, and that was really the race I really wanted to qualify in. Um, but it was not my day. The Chicago Marathon um, last year was very rainy and very humid.
Mm.
And very early on, I realized that it was just not gonna happen for me that day. And so it was a little depressing during the race to realize that. But I just remember feeling the heaviness, and I mean, my shoes were soaking wet, and you just have to at some point let it go and say, okay, I'm just gonna run this race for fun and see what happens.
Mhm.
So I did 3:39:40 in Chicago, and I needed a 3:35 to qualify.
Wow, you were close,
So,
even with the weather
well,
conditions.
I mean, almost 5 minutes. So
Right.
still, it's a pretty big gap. But I had the feeling that the race did not represent my fitness at all. Like at that point, I knew that I could have done it,
Mhm.
and that really really bothered me. So, and we went to have like the pizza afterwards and everything. And I was talking to my husband, and that night we were chatting about it, and my coach had made me write down a backup race. I
Okay.
didn't want to do it because in my mind it's like, well, if you have a backup race, of course you're not going to do well on your original because you have something to fall back on. But I did it anyway, and it was Indianapolis. And so the night of the Chicago Marathon, I spoke to my husband and I decided I'm signing up for Indianapolis, which was a month later.
Okay.
Um, so I signed up. I had a month, basically did exactly what my coach told me, mostly rested, did one long-ish run right in the middle of that month, and then taper again.
Mhm.
Um, and then Indianapolis was literally like a business trip. I mean, I went there by myself. I got a hotel for one night, um, the night before the race.
Mhm.
Um, Drove over there, slept there, had my pasta dinner by myself in my room. Like it was a no distraction, no frills kind of thing. Um, the weather was perfect, the conditions were perfect, and I had space in Chicago and all the big races. What you love about it is, you know, there's a ton of people and excitement and all of that. But I can tell you that in Chicago, towards the end with the rain and everything, if another person, like, if I had to read another one of those signs or hear another cowbell, I felt like I was just going to lose it. It's like when everything's great and things are going great, it motivates you. But for me specifically, in that race with the rain, it didn't. And Indianapolis was just like wide open spaces. I could, you know, I could get to my pace and keep it because I didn't have to zigzag around everybody, and just everything worked out perfectly that day for me. And so I finished with a 3:28. So I qualified by, you know, 7 minutes. The the difference, I mean, between rain, like bad conditions and good conditions, was, you know, a 3:39 to a 3:28, that which is huge.
Yeah.
But I feel like once you know, like from your training what your result is going to be. Nothing is surprising. I mean, I would do my long runs at a pretty fast pace, um, which I had never done before. I used to do long runs, you know, a lot slower and more cautious. And my coach was like, "You can't do a long run slowly and expect to be fast in the race. You
Mhm.
have to train for what you're racing." And so that was a really hard part of the training, was just getting in the long runs. But then I knew exactly how my race was going to go, because if the conditions were good, because I had trained those long runs at those paces already.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
It is huge on race day, and sometimes we beat ourselves up for these things, but we really can't control what the weather's gonna look like. We can't control what the crowd's gonna look like, or what our body's gonna do, because sometimes we just are gonna physically cramp, or
Mhm.
there's going to be issues that we didn't know we'd have. We didn't have them
Yeah.
for training. And then we beat ourselves up for it
Mhm.
and are like, I had a terrible race. I'm never gonna do it. But that's not true, because
Mhm.
then the next race, like you had, Chicago was terrible, but Indiana was perfect conditions. I mean, everything lined up.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard because we're training, 18 to 20 weeks for this race that we don't know what it's going to be like. But like you
Yeah.
said, we know what we did in training, so we know what we're capable of. And so I love
Mhm.
that you decided to go and do it again. Um, and to beat that, so that you could know that you could do it, you did it. And why not
Yeah.
do it with that training instead of waiting
Mhm.
and doing a new cycle when you don't know, okay, injury could come or whatever it is. Do it while you know you're physically ready and
Yeah.
capable. Did it feel weird to have only a month in between? Have you ever done that before with a marathon?
So I did do it before. Not for a PR though. I did Chicago and New York. So the second time I did New York, I got into Chicago too. So I'm not gonna like give up going doing Chicago or New York. So me and my husband, we did Chicago, and then a month later we did New York. So I had done it before, but it's different when you're doing it to improve. So it's funny actually. I did the Chicago when I did it a month before New York. That's the one where I sort of wanted to qualify for Boston, but didn't really train for it as much. Um, and then in New York, we said, okay, we're just running for fun. Like, and me and my husband ran the whole thing together. And I did a 3:47, which is exactly what I did on my very first marathon, just like running and chatting. I had done it before. It's so important to have someone tell you what to do.
Right.
Um, because your goal is A, not to get injured, number one, not to get injured, especially if you're going for a PR. Like if you start a race injured, you just know from the get go that, you know, it's not going to happen. And then knowing how to rest and eat right and drink right, like it just becomes critical in a condensed amount of time.
Hmm. Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit, just about how you had a coach and you had somebody to be able to speak into
Hmm.
your training and your goals, and how that differs from other races that you might have done, or even because it sounded like
Hmm.
you had a coach in the beginning too when you ran your first marathon.
Yeah.
What was the difference?
I think every coach has their own kind of philosophy,
Hmm.
and um, you change as you sort of continue doing races. You change too, and so a lot of it is finding the right fit. I can tell you that now. Okay, I'm going to be 38 in August. My body is definitely not the same as it was. Um, I think I'm a lot stronger than I was before, but I'm also a lot smarter with my training and my nutrition than I was before.
Mm.
Um, so my coach now, and this is a concept that I had never sort of thought of because I was always like, go, 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 you know, get as much, miles as I can get. And I was very focused on, hitting my numbers.
Mhm.
And with this coach, it was like the workouts were really, really hard, but um, I never worked out 2 days and I never ran 2 days in a row.
Okay.
So he always told me, look, if the conditions aren't good for your workout, like if you're not feeling good in the morning or you went out and you drank the night before or whatever it is, if you're not feeling like you'll complete the workout 100%, just take a day off. Do it tomorrow. Like trying for him, like just going out and trying or just, going for like a fun run, it was like didn't count for him. For
Mhm.
him, it was like make every workout, and he was right. Like when you have kids, like you don't have time. Every workout has to make you faster, make you better, and it could be that making you better is it could be a mental thing too, right? Maybe running makes you feel good just mentally and gives you a break from what's going on. Whatever the reason is or whatever the goal is, um, you have to like cater to that and having that day of rest in between, even though sometimes it was hard because I did want to run and my neighbor was going for a run and I wanted to run with her, so there's like the social part of it too. um, but he incorporated speed work into every workout and I would finish the workout just completely depleted, but then the next day was complete rest, and I think that philosophy helped me improve. And when I, for qualifying for Boston, I ran 3 times a week. I did not run more than that. So it clearly worked,
Mhm.
especially with, my age and my fitness. It was just avoiding injury is was the biggest concern.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And isn't that
mhm,
interesting? I think if you were to have coached yourself, would you have ever thought I only need to run 3 days a week?
no, I would have, downloaded the a generic Boston Marathon thing, and that probably would have been it. So for me, that was a huge change of pace, and
Mhm.
also the psychology of not being able to complete a workout, of having 12 sets and being able to complete only 10 or only 5. I had workouts where it was just too hard.
Mhm.
um, and obviously I talked to my coach and we always change and adapt to things, but he always made sure that the workouts were at the upper level of my fitness ability, and that's the only way to get faster. Like
Right.
there's no way around it. You have to like push yourself to your highest heart rate, to your fastest speed to make the gains that you want to. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I think is important about a coach, because they will push you past the limit that think you're capable of, or the limit that you want to do.
mhm,
Because you're right. We have to push ourselves out of that comfort zone in order to get better. And
mhm,
I mean, I am a coach, but I still
yeah,
hire a coach because I can't coach myself nearly as well as someone else can coach me. And so
mhm,
I always think that coaches are invaluable for those reasons. And, and then the mental side, just the fact that they're going to push that mentality, or that
mhm,
mental toughness, because your workout is putting you to the edge. I think that's really, really cool and powerful, because it really
mhm.
does change us. And I think it changes us more than just in our running. we can kind of use it in
Yeah.
our everyday lives. And so I think having a coach is super powerful. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the struggles of your training, qualifying for boxing, and a lot of it comes with the fact that we're moms and trying
Mhm.
to find
Yeah.
the time to train and to be able to do everything for us, but be able to do for our kids what they need too. So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit about your journey through finding the.
Yeah. So I think it helps when you start running or exercising before you have kids, because you get it's part of your life and you're excited to get back to it. Um, I can tell you I ran one half marathon when I was a half Ironman when I was 3 months pregnant, and a full marathon in Disney when I was 5 months pregnant. So I had always I had I had kept running throughout. Um, but I mean, with kids, it's challenging the most when they're small. I mean, there's no way to go around it. The first, 10 years of your kid's life are super demanding, um, and so you have to be able to work around it. I mean, I'm lucky that my husband also runs, and so we can alternate. But it's definitely challenging. I would have to say the most challenging, I, I guess, race I had, because it's when you have that like type A personality, you're always signing up for something, even when you probably shouldn't, and you should probably be waiting. Um, I just had my son, and I signed up for a half marathon. I always waited the full 6 weeks after having a baby to even start going back. And I gained so much weight with every kid that it took a while to get back to any kind of normal pace.
Okay.
Um, but the whole breastfeeding and baby part and running was just really, really hard. And there was a race in Chicago, and I didn't realize you had to take like a bus to the start of the race. And I actually it was a half marathon. I did it with my mom. Um, and my plan was, I was like, okay, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to feed my baby, then I'm going to pump, and then I'm going to go do the race, and everything's going to be perfect. It'll be my comeback after having a kid. And I had this like perfect idea of how things were going to go. What ended up happening was we woke up, we realized we actually had to take the bus there. We realized this in the morning. So I didn't have time to feed my baby. I didn't have time to pump, and got straight on the bus. So I was really full even before, like, even before the race started. And so I ran the race with my mom. Thankfully, I sweat enough that nobody realized that, I I was leaking the whole race. But I did like every baby that I heard crying, I was about to steal someone's baby. Like that's how bad. Like I was about to run up to a spectator and steal their baby just to like give you some sort of relief.
Right.
Um, and that I think was the hardest, for me. Because even when you're running pregnant, you have to be very careful and cautious and everything, but it's still just you. You don't have anything external like that. And this was, there's so many things that have to fall into place. And I think I learned there that really it's best to sort of take your time when you're going back. Like there's plenty of it. I mean, and I've had 3 kids, and every time I was pregnant, I gained like 50 to 55 pounds. And then that's not all baby. It all had to come back off. And I think just being patient and having that confidence that, you know, you've lost the weight before, you've gone back to running before, you can do it again. It's part of who you are versus something that you do, I think is kind of the mental state that you need. Now the kids are older, so it's definitely easier, and I have help. And so that's, I mean, I basically joined the au pair program, so that so that I could work out because my husband travels a lot. So that to me was a lifesaver because I have 3 kids. My au pair lives with us. She starts every day at 6 so that I could work out. It worked out kind of perfectly. So I'm really, I mean, I'm lucky in a lot of ways. I know there are moms that are very challenged as far as finding the time to work out, but I feel like now it's starting to get really fun because my kids who have been watching me this whole time are now really interested in it. So my son rides bikes with me. He rides in the basement with me. He'll if I go for a run, he can ride his bike next to me. So I think there's this like evolution that if you just sort of stick to it, even though it's hard with the timing and you wake up early and you're tired and all of those things together, it really pays back later when you can go for a pretty fast run and your kid can keep up on the bike. And it's
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And
mhm,
that's so true because I think it's important for us as moms to be able to show our kids either how to be healthy or how to be successful or whatever it is, and to just model for them the things that we want to be
mhm,
taught to them as well. And
yeah,
usually that is kind of the case. They usually do want to take along or do
yeah.
what mommy's doing or whatnot. And so I love
Mhm.
that. And how old are your kids?
8, 6, and 4.
Yeah. So they're right there in
Mhm.
those impressionable ages. And the nice thing, I mean,
Yeah.
8 is a really big stepping stone because 8, they're starting to be a little bit more independent or want to be. And I'd say it gets even more
Mhm.
life changing when they turn 9 or 10 and you really can leave them by themselves for a
Yeah.
little, or they can babysit. And man, because that's the season
Mm.
I'm in, and it's so different than the season I was in a long,
Yeah.
when I started running, because I did start running. I actually started running in college a little bit, but I didn't really get into
Mhm.
racing until after I had my second child. So I started right in the midst of babies, and
Yeah.
really hard place to start. But when you don't know any different, I guess it it works out.
Yeah.
But it is so
Well, the
funny.
nice
Like I'm going out the door.
yeah. Well, that's the nice thing, right? At least when you're out running after you've had kids, especially when they're little, no one's crying. Like, you are guaranteed, an hour or however long you're out where no one's gonna bother you. So
Yes.
I think that's the biggest selling point no one really talks about.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's my peace. I always tell people it's my peaceful time.
Yeah.
They're like, "How is running
Mhm.
peaceful?" I'm like, "You're by yourself. You can throw on your music or a
Yeah.
podcast. You can just take in nature and get sun. I mean,
Mhm.
what more do you want?"
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I love it. So,
Mhm.
do you think any of your kids are going to take to running? Or I know you talked about,
I think so.
yeah.
I think they all will to some degree. My son is by far the most right now into all of this stuff. I think he'll start doing triathlons too.
Okay.
Um, just triathlons for kids are just it's so diverse and there's always something going on.
Hmm.
We have run like a 5K together and he loves the atmosphere. He's like the first one, like if they're doing a warm-up dance for all of we did a turkey trot and they did this warm-up dance, he was like out there like doing the dance, like he loves the whole, like everything around it. And I wasn't planning on taking him to Boston with me. It was going to be like a more solo thing.
Hmm.
But he did ask me, I think like last week, we were talking about Boston and he asked if he could come when I do go. So it could be something that we incorporate that he come watch. So we'll see.
That's super cool. That's super
Hmm.
cool. Yeah, my first Boston, because this will be my second. But my
Hmm.
first one, it was just me and my husband. We did like a date weekend, and but
Nice.
and my kids were younger, so I'm excited to bring my whole family this next time, as long as
Hmm.
it happens.
Yeah.
Then so they can experience it too. But I kind of wanted to experience it first, and then so I think that's really cool. If you, I think he will just love it.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
cool. It's a very cool accomplishment for the kids to see their parents accomplishing a dream,
Hmm.
and they like
Yeah.
it's a victory for them as well. And that's the neat part of the experience. So let's talk a little bit
Hmm.
about Boston 2020. So you qualified back in November 2018. So it was like a
Yeah.
year and a half waiting for Boston. You trained for Boston.
Hmm.
And then obviously with COVID-19 and the pandemic and everything going on, it got postponed at first. So and we'll talk a little bit about the postponement too, but and then in September, it was supposed to be September 14th of this year, but it
Mhm.
finally canceled. So what were your initial emotions or reactions to it actually officially canceling for this year?
So after they postponed, I sort of knew it was going to get canceled. Um, I think for me, the moment of realization was more that postponing it. To me, that was basically the cancellation. Um, and at first, it was strange because I started getting like all these text messages from my neighbor and her running friends, and asking me like how I'm doing, and um, I think it was just the thing is, it wasn't Boston in isolation, right? It was everything that was going on together. So all of the things that you're looking forward to are canceled all at once. So it's hard to isolate Boston as kind of one
Hmm.
event. That I feel like was kind of the pinnacle, or like the ultimate, you know, cancellation that nobody wanted to happen, but it was happening everywhere. So you had no sort of like consolation prize. It's not like, oh, this is canceled, but we're still, going to the Grand Canyon. Like there's nothing. There's nothing to look forward to. So I think that's what made it especially hard. Um, I hadn't yet gotten to the point where I was training. I mean, I was training for it, but I didn't do a lot of like really long runs beforehand. And I mean, I continued, but I knew that it was, I mean, you had to just look at other countries to see what was going to happen. So it was pretty obvious to me, just looking at Europe. And I mean, I work with a lot of, international winemakers, and my au pairs from Italy, and just talking to her and watching the news, I mean, the writing was on the wall.
Right,
I
right.
tried to stay optimistic. If you looked in the Boston group at the time,
Mhm.
people were, they didn't want anyone to be negative. But in the end, the negative ones were the more realistic, the more realistic ones. So it was depressing. I tried to change my mindset around it. Um, you know, go for easy, fun runs, and obviously keep running. Like there's no way that was ever going to stop. But running for fun and not pushing myself too much. Plus, they closed the track, so
Right.
I did hop the
That
fence.
day.
The first day they closed the track, I hopped the fence, and did my and then the campus police. It's like on a a high school campus. They like kicked me out. It's like everything was closing on me. Um, but I think I'm reframing it in my mind as, first of all, I'm so happy that my qualifying time still counts. The thought of having to like qualify again and then waiting and then doing it is just like it's a lot. It's a lot of time. So I'm really happy about that. And right now I'm thinking about it as like I qualified once and I'm basically going to get two medals. I'm going to do the virtual race and get my 2020 medal.
Right.
That's going to be a historic one. And then I'll use my same qualifying time for 2021, and then I'll get to have that real experience. Because for me, the marathon is for the experience. So anything virtual to me is in it's something else. I mean, that's not what I want to do. I love racing because I love the crowds and I love the travel there and I love the excitement and all that stuff that you just don't get in a virtual race. I'd rather not do it, say like accept that it's not going to happen and reframe my mind around next year and my upcoming goals.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear
Mhm.
you too. It's the
Mhm.
same. Virtual. I just don't have that adrenaline either. And I like having a time goal. I like having or something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Virtual, that's just not the
Mhm.
case for me. I'm like, it's just a pleasure run if I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
So what made you decide, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and run this virtual Boston.
I think for me it was mainly the medal.
Me too.
um, I feel like at this point in sort of like my run career, if you can call it that, is that I could wake up tomorrow and run the marathon distance. There's, you know, and I could finish it with a smile on my face and, be perfectly happy. And I'll, if I even do it the most relaxed possible, it'll take me, less than 4 hours. So I'm pretty confident in myself and just knowing the distances that I've done that I can do that.
Mhm.
So for me, it's just the mainly the medal and the t-shirt, but it's also knowing that sort of 2020 is kind of a historic year in the Boston Marathon. Um, and you get that. I mean, I ordered the jacket pretty early on.
Yep, me too.
um,
Been sitting there
just
forever.
yeah, I know. So I just feel like I'd still be able to say that I did it. For me, it's not like I knew that getting into the marathon, I would finish the marathon. It's not that I wouldn't finish. For me, the whole like, wearing something if you've done it is more like if it's something you've never done. Like, no one's going to get an Ironman tattoo if you haven't done an Ironman. Like, that is a distance and a whole different ball game. But like, I mean, anyone who's qualified for Boston knows they're going to finish the race. Like, they are capable of finishing that distance. So I don't think it's a question of if. So it's to say that I did the 2020 marathon, and I'll probably do it. My husband's actually running an ultra at the same time, so I probably have to run like 50 kilometers anyway to help him out at night because
Perfect.
that's the good wife that I am. um,
That is really nice of you.
so so I probably will just sort of use that and have a good many hours to talk and chat with my husband
Yeah. Hey,
and motivate
getting
him.
that.
Yeah. And I'm signed up for Chicago, and I don't think that will happen either. So,
Yeah. With everything going on in Chicago, I can imagine. Yeah,
hmm,
because
yeah.
I think a lot of I'm pretty certain that any big marathon this fall will get canned,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But who knows? Maybe not.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that race season will come back and that Boston 2021 will happen. And thankfully, I mean, you have a 7 minute buffer. So
Hmm.
I was trying to calculate. It's really hard to calculate what's the buffer going to need to be, but it was really,
Yeah.
really small this year or for 2020. It was like a minute and
Hmm.
39. So I couldn't imagine it being much more than a few minutes. So I'm I wish that they would have been able to defer all of us. I mean, that would have been obviously ideal.
Yeah. Hmm.
But the fact that you have a 7 minute buffer means that you will most likely be at that starting line on in 2020,
Yeah.
which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Um, I was looking forward to the one and only fall Boston, but
Yeah.
that's
I thought
okay.
that too.
Like, this is an epic year. Like, we got canceled. Now we're in the fall, but there is something about doing it on Patriots Day too. So, now
Yeah.
when it came to 2020, this was your first Boston that you would have been running. What would have made it kind of a victory run for you? Or actually, come 2021, why will this be your victory run when you get
Yeah.
to?
So there's always like that. Sometimes you have these goals that you don't want to say out loud because you're afraid that because they're too out there.
Mhm.
And for me, like in the back of my head, I think, well, what will make this, race be amazing other than just doing it? And to me, that would be like qualifying for Boston in Boston.
Mm.
But I don't think I can actually do it because when talking to like my, people who have done it, it's a race that does require experience with that race.
Yeah,
And just because the conditions are so versatile year over year, you know the the uphill, the downhills, it's very to train for in the right way, and it can throw you curveballs. And I know this from my neighbors. So even though kind of in the back of my head, I'm thinking that, but then I want to say like I want to get my like my money's worth, right? Like, I worked so hard to get into this. Why not just run it for fun and just take it all in? That's when I'd really be getting like the experience that I worked so hard for. Like, I'd really be getting it then, because then I wouldn't be focused on like my time and and just, beating myself up or doing anything like that. I'd be literally doing it for fun and soaking up all of the crowds and like, the signs and the people. And so I'm kind of in between those two mindsets of like, do I really go for it just so that I could say I qualified for Boston in Boston?
Which is pretty
I
cool.
don't, which is cool, but but then there's a risk that that doesn't happen, and that's a big risk. Or do I say, like, you know what? I've worked for it. This is like a first marathon, right? The first marathon, you want to enjoy yourself. You want to have a great time. You want to, feel all the feelings that you're supposed to be feeling, which is the original reason I wanted to do Boston. So I'm leaning towards just, go and do my best and enjoy the city and what I worked hard for. I'm not going to the Olympics. I'm not, this isn't my career. So at some point, you have to put things in perspective and say, this is only a race you can do by qualifying. And I did that. So maybe I should just enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, I mean, that's a good perspective to say. I mean, we always, especially as achievers, Boston qualifiers, we have goals. We're goal oriented, and so
Mhm.
it's hard not to have a big goal at Boston. And I can tell you my
Yeah.
experience. I did that the first time, and it did not go the way I wanted. It was a hot Boston, but
Hmm.
I that's why I wanted to go back, because I said I want to experience it. I really want to take
Hmm.
everything in instead of, because I was just in misery while I was running it.
Yeah.
So so this is my redemption one where I'm just gonna go enjoy it too. And so
Yeah.
there's valor in both. There's value to
Hmm.
having that goal at Boston, but also just to take it in. So it'll be fun to see what you decide
Right.
with it, and
Yeah.
all that good stuff. So if something I like to end our conversations on is something for the listeners. So we'll talk about running in general. So let's say it's somebody who wants to get to do their first marathon, or maybe they want to hit their first BQ and they just have these struggles. What is one
Hmm.
piece of advice you'd have for um, my listeners in how to overcome those either mental blocks or just those barriers that are kind of getting in the way of them going after it?
I think as far as mental barriers, I would say sometimes you just need someone else to break them for you,
Mm.
and then it opens up everything. And so it's hard to say for each individual person what that might be. But I think, and also you meet people along the way and they change the way you think about things. And I think part of, I think the biggest thing I would say is like enjoy the journey, because that's a long time, or here in this case, even longer than I thought. But if you're not enjoying the journey, I don't think it's worth the effort. You
Mhm.
should be able to, I mean, I saw all kinds of posts on the Boston group about people who were like not very happy about running. I think you have to just love running first of all before you even think about, trying to achieve goals. It has to be something that you wake up really, really wanting to do every day. You don't have to do it every day, but you still have to have that, it has to be fun. It has to be something that you like doing. And then you can layer on the, the achievements. But I think having that, be something that you love to do, that's what's going to get you to push yourself further and further. And if you don't want to push yourself further, and then I don't think that people should. It's so individual. Unless this is your job, there's really nothing, there's nothing wrong with also just, running for fun and doing marathons. Some people go their goals are distance. If you're not a fast runner, maybe is your thing. Maybe you want to find ultra marathons. If running isn't exciting enough, maybe you want triathlons, adding in swimming and biking, and then there's a whole culture that comes along with it. I think finding that journey in your path and trying different things, I think, is what sort of leads you to your goal. And everyone has a different goal, so don't be tempted to do other people's goals.
Yeah.
Really try to think if that's really something that will make you happy and make you feel accomplished, and not do it just because you feel like it's the next sort of logical step.
Yeah, that is truth right there. It is very individual, and it's very, your goal needs to be your goal because it has to be something that gets you out the door. And you don't want to
Hmm.
be waking up in misery to it. You should be waking up joyful to go after it. So I love that. And I love that
Hmm.
you kind of have that focus where it's like, I'm doing what my coach says, because I think it's important to have that one voice speaking into your life, and that you're not going to 500 different places to look for things, or, oh, this is the new thing. This is the new latest, greatest thing that's,
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. Oh, no, I have to go. And you're on these rabbit trails. It's so much more important to
Yeah.
have that one voice so that they can help
Yeah.
things, and they can help you adjust, and they know exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it. So
Hmm.
I think kudos to you on
Yeah.
that, because I think that's really, really important. And that's probably
Yeah.
you in the long run.
I tell my coach, if I succeed or fail, it's your doing, because there's nothing else going on between what you give me and what I do. So if I can't do it, something, a workout that you give me, it's because I legitimately, it's not possible.
Right, right. And then he just has to tweak it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what we do. So
Yeah.
cool. Well, Anat, it was really, really great to have this conversation with you. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing, and I look forward to seeing you at Boston 2021. So,
All right. Well, catch up for a, what is it? The Boston beer? Is that what you're supposed to drink after?
yeah, I'm not really a big beer drinker or anything, so I don't ever get into that. But yes,
All right. Wine.
yeah, better.
All right. Thanks for having me on. This was so much fun.
Yes, have a great day. Wasn't that fun? I just loved sitting with Anat and talking about her running journey. I love how everyone's journey is different, yet we do have similar goals, and the fact that we want to become better as people or as runners, and we want to hit these goals. And a lot of it does come from us wanting to show our kids and model for our kids how to succeed, or how to be healthy, or how to have a passion. And I just love hearing that from others. I hope you had a good time today. I know I did, and I'm really looking forward to the next interviews that are coming soon here. Something I love talking about with Anat was how a coach helped her to do the training that she wanted and to push her to a new level. And I think that's so important for us to think about that, and to be able to let somebody else come in and invest in their life, and to be that coach for them, to be able to see what you may not see. And I know I've had a coach in the past. I have coaches when I have running goals, even though I am a run coach. So I understand the value of having a coach. I'm super excited to announce that I've started doing some group coaching where I take you from the beginning of your goal, help you work on that goal setting, and get to the point where you can crush that goal. It's a 12-week program using the Red Hot formula. And if you're interested in finding out more about it, you can just head on over to www.redhotmindset.com/group coaching. I would love to see you in there. Don't forget to light up that subscribe button if you haven't already. Share this video with others and hit the bell so you don't miss the next video. Dream huge, and remember, you are a winner. Just run your race.